You don't need to be an MGH former House officer to look at the tracing in the bottommost green tracing and see it isn't actually VTAC, but it's a very important signal. The Prostate Cancer Foundation, among many things this year, went to the dogs. And in fact, our curiosity about how to solve the prostate cancer problem is so intense that it wouldn't surprise you that we would be looking around the world for any piece of new science, any new piece of biotechnology, any new piece of thinking that could end death and suffering from prostate cancer. And with that, I'd be grateful for the first slide, and let me field test the pointer for a second. Right. This year's State of the Science talk is No Stage Beyond Cure, and that PCF this year also stands for Prevent, Cure, Flatlining. I want to answer 5 questions in my remarks. First, who's here? Second, what happened scientifically in 2019 that changes everything for patients and scientists working in the problem? I want to answer the question, what challenges does PCF face 81 days towards the next decade, a new decade, a new set of opportunities in 2020 and beyond? Fourth, what are PCF's plans for partnerships in 2020 to accelerate putting the foundation out of business, which is the foundation's business plan with research and support? And last, but just as importantly, what you can do for PCF as it answers these first 4 questions. So first, who's here? Well, Michael Milken, Chris Evanson, Dr. Stuart Holden, Clark Howard, David Ederer, Ralph Feinerman, very digitally, Reverend Rosie Greer, lifetime board member, Shmuel Matar, Hank Nordoff, Paul Volante, Andy von Aschenbach, Neelan Youngblood, Jeff Zisk from our board. And we have extraordinary donors committed their lives to life-saving research through your hands and eyes and brains. Elliot and Nan Abramowitz, Mark Baker, extraordinary leader in biotechnology, Michael and Patricia Burns, Leslie Black, Mark Buzza, Lisa Cummins and the Cummins family, Karen and Michael Durden, Claire Guest, Mark Hedstrom, Scott Helms, Ed and Ina Lofspring, and our Fab 4 from the VA, but Rachel Ramoni and Sumitra Moraldihar, particularly in leadership in the VA, are here. Tom Olson, Vinnie Smith, David Taglight, from all over the world. And Dr. Skip Holden himself. Wait a minute. Who did I miss, darling? Skip Holden? I got him. Thank you very much. And in fact, sitting up front, because PCF, the F stands for family, among other things, is in fact the majority of our science committee, called the Discovery and Translation Committee. Our indefatigable chairman for 13 years, Chris Evanson, please wave. Our medical director for basically 25.83 years, Skip Holden, again, wave. And of course, Shmuel Matar, Paul Volante, Clark Howard. In fact, over the last basically 10 months, we've had 6 meetings, 6 hours, and generated with actually 80% of the board participates on the science committee. We may be the only medical foundation where so much of the board is so deeply engaged every month in what you publish and report. We have 209 hot points for research investment already for 2020, and we're not finished with the year. And of course, who also is here in terms of human capital? Here it comes. 444 from academia, including the NCI, VA, and DoD. 170 representatives from biotech and pharma this year in healthcare, 118 academic institutions, 18 countries, 57 biopharmaceutical companies represented here who funded this meeting, unrestricted, generous retreat supporters, 1 chief science officer extraordinaire, Dr. Howard Sewell, without whom we wouldn't have had this meeting, and for whom I think we really should stand up and give a standing ovation. We have We have 13 medical research foundations, and we have one founder and active chairman for every day that this foundation has existed on this planet, trying to drive the science to save lives. But the best is coming with his talk after mine. Who also is here after 12 years and 73 Team Science Awards, the Movember Foundation. And really importantly, they're now the largest collaborative team science funder in the history of prostate cancer research. And at the Prostate Cancer Foundation is not just the 56 million. But we actually think about this like Yeats wrote about his friends. When we think of Movember, we think where man's glory most begins and ends, and we say, my glory was, I had such friends. Paul Volante, on behalf of everyone in the research community, to all the Movember community, God bless you and thank you for all you've done for our field. Well, who else is here? We added, the class of 2019 is 29 new PCF young investigators in multiple disciplines. Their faces are now in the header, so basically the headshots are crawling into the headers of the PowerPoint. We added a young investigator from Italy, Benvenuta Italia. That's a new country, and we're so excited about this ongoing investment in human capital. Almost all the progress we're making in our field now is ontologically connected to our PCF Young Investigator Program in teams. And we have teams of teams being led by actually what was a new eponym, I guess, a grown-up young investigator. In addition, who's here is social media. So New Line Cinema put out Snakes on a Plane in 2006, and thanks to Twitter and the Prostate Cancer Foundation, Young Investigators on a Plane in 2019, you can read, actually from Adam Sharp, we need wider lenses for the ever-increasing @PCF_science European contingent. Thanks to 73 donors, individual donors for this cohort, we have the most extraordinary, I think, collection of gifted and talented young investigators now in 27 different disciplines around the cancer problem. Everywhere from bioinformaticians and molecular biologists to mathematicians and olfaction scientists. In addition, we have 563 funded researchers today, 242 active research awards at 126 million if you're doing the portfolio numbers, and even 100 Team Science Challenge Awards active, but Howard and I are pretty sure that number goes to 111 by the 31st of December. 118 research centers, 18 countries, and we've doubled the number of species, intelligent species, actually doing the research, from just Homo sapiens to Homo sapiens plus Canis lupus familiaris in the last year. We have led the world in inventing the unpublished knowledge exchange. The late Larry Stupski on our board really framed this, the whole idea that Mike created a culture where it's the unpublished data that matters as much as the published. Under the leadership of Andrea Miyahira, who is our director of research and has done a fabulous job at this, 298 days in the year. Basically, we've had unpublished data exchanged every 3.55 days, except for last night with 143 more posters. We've actually had an interaction of more than 20 minutes looking at unpublished data 227 times. Standalone journal clubs, monthly scientific working groups. Our foundation is so dedicated to accelerating discovery to the patient. We walk it, we live it, we do it every day. And we thank you for your confidence in us, not to disseminate your unpublished data, merely to connect it with other colleagues. What's scientifically in 2019 changes everything? Just a few things. This morning you got a real snapshot, but there are 6 really quite extraordinary things that happen for patients that have basically extended metastasis-free survival to FDA approvals, have changed the paradigm for how we may approach as much as 11 or 7 out of 100 prostate cancer patients who may now be told they have oligometastatic disease where we have curative intent. In fact, as the grandson and son of Oriole fans, the only good thing about this year, being an Oriole fan, was the report of the Oriole trial by Futron, PCF Young Investigator, Challenge Award winner, fundamentally at Astro. This talk will be online. You can study this at great length, but basically our clinical trials engine has never been more operative, and of course, Johan de Bona gave a spectacular talk on the work he and Maha Hussein presented at ESMO, and on it goes. This entire talk would simply be outlining the portfolio of practice-changing efforts that are the extension of our challenge awards, and we're going to have to basically invent some sort of new information visualization to connect young investigator here, team here, challenge awards here, leverage here, trials here, the number of patients impacted here. But this single slide is over 7,000 patients benefiting. It was an incredible year in terms of publications. First, there were 8,799 papers on PubMed 2 days ago. But in terms of already being cited papers, 562, no quiz, there's your distribution. But what's so fascinating to us is there's a beautiful distribution of basic translational and clinical work in the portfolio that's impactful. I wanted basically to talk in basic science terms a little bit about what provoked us in Santa Monica. First, this work from Paul Boutros and colleagues, I just want to read it out to the basic scientists and the clinician scientists because it's so profound in terms of the proteogenomic landscape of curable prostate cancer and how we need to start to broaden how we think. Fundamentally and globally, messenger RNA abundance changes explain only 10% of protein abundance variability in prostate cancer. So prognostic biomarkers combining genomic or epigenomic features with proteomic ones significantly outperform biomarkers comprised of a single data type. So in the future, you're probably not going to want to bring a single channel of any data to a PCF meeting and actually expect a silent audience. And we're thrilled that an example of how big data and bioinformatics can come and really open up our concepts of how to make better prognostic markers is here. And on the bioinformatics front as well, we're stunned to know that prostate cancer is a disease of circular RNAs. That's a first in field. Howard Sewell and Andre and I have talked a lot about this. We're deeply interested in the basic science of what did these circular RNAs do. But this is not basically your mentor's cDNA disease anymore. Other congratulations go out to Misha Beltran and colleagues, David Rickman. Lineage plasticity, or why, for the citizens and sciences, the audience, why can these cells evolve in only a few weeks? Lineage plasticity got a big jump forward scientifically in our field with this very important observation out of a challenge award. And of course, the basic science we support, for instance, Stuart Rahr and this profound cancer philanthropy at the University of Michigan under Arul Chanayan impacts every form of human cancer. Basically, circular RNA gets ruled in as a really important part of the molecular biology of every lethal cancer, really as a consequence of funding bioinformaticians and genomicists and pathologists ahead of the wonderful support later of the Department of Defense or the National Cancer Institute. And it was basically a great year for the science of fat shaming to stop cancer deaths. And what I've tried to do here is, for those who actually went to Drew Katz's young investigator David LeBay's paper and poster, basically we now have a very strong connection from saturated fat to transcription factor to outcome to basically CHEK2 dysregulation, the whole molecular biology of precision nutrition. If there's no stage beyond cure, there should be no stage where we aren't trying to do really precision metabolic care for patients in a new way. And just as important to that is the population science coming towards the bench. And Lorelei Mucci and colleagues at Harvard and Iceland, et cetera, have really identified that visceral fat, not the stuff on the surface, but the fat that coats your organs, particularly your abdomen, may be its own organ of pouring out basically uncharacterized but really important factors that actually promote prostate cancer survival and death, and maybe clonal expansion. So no amount of being skinny on the outside may be as important as molecularly managing your visceral fat on the inside. But the fact that it was such a big year for both NMIC and CMIC makes us very interested to see what happens in the future when we start to look again at the biochemistry, the fundamental basically biochemistry of metabolism in a new century with our new tools, including our big data tools. And it's going to be essential for urologists and radiation oncologists and medical oncologists to begin to appreciate that we brought you liquid biopsies and we're bringing you a whole new kind of precision metabolomics and nutrition. Lastly, out of these 562 gripping papers, there's a Spotify playlist I commend to some of you that I think are particularly interesting. I'll just read out 3 of these because I think they're so incredibly important. One is that we have increased serine and 1-carbon pathway metabolism by basically PK lambda I deficiency. There is no quiz. But the whole idea that we could crack the code on neuroendocrine prostate cancer as uncommon but incredibly, incredibly aggressive disease has a whole new molecular biology. We didn't have that 5 years ago. And the SLY oncogene, the FOXA1 mutations in prostate cancer are a huge clue, actually, for a whole new way of developing new therapeutics. Immuno-oncology has had a significant commitment. We're very interested in funding fire starters in 2020. Our family has a lot of unpublished experience all of a sudden, and how fast thermodynamically you can go from cold to hot. But very important for funders of this research to understand that we are just as interested in funding fire retardant removers as fire starters. But the field is very vibrant. Howard and I were amazed. 161 papers. That's 2 papers a day right now in immuno-oncology for prostate cancer. And in 1995, Skip Holden stood up with several others and said, this foundation is going after the immune system as a part of a strategy of going after 14 areas of therapeutic development. Here we are not having just delivered checkpoint inhibitors, but deep now into the whole question of how we start to bioengineer basically fire retardant removal or manage myeloid signaling and still optimize patient benefit. One last thing about the beautiful work in this area is we haven't seen our best idea yet. Our challenge awards are very, very geared in 2020 towards ideas no one's ever tested before, like identifying the IL-23 receptor. We're interested in the ideas that no one else would fund if there's really good preliminary evidence in terms of creating an explosive anti-neoplastic immune response, because that so differentiates itself from pruning of pyrrolation inhibitors. If we can set this, basically, if we can get basically the biological thermodynamics right in these metastatic sites. And last but not least, we are beginning to see patients, a few, who are going back on testosterone, having been exceptional responders, having no evidence of disease, who actually are part of N=1 clinical research to restore them to how they were endocrinologically, hormonally, in terms of testosterone levels, before basically they had advanced disease. We're just at the dawn of this field, but we strongly encourage you bring others into our field who are interested, as we are, in turning cold to hot. What challenges that face us at the basic science level is that we know that it's a disease of DNA deletions. We know we have tandem duplications. We know we have chromothripsis. We know this is still going to take the life of an American man every 22 minutes around the clock, and we still don't understand how it do it, to quote the late Don Coffey. So fundamental science around the carcinogenesis of basically structural variant change in the prostate cancer genome is an open basic science question we're very intrigued to fund. And we are concerned that we'll never end every death from prostate cancer until we understand truly what makes prostate cancer a DNA-specific disease of structural variants. Well, you look back over the last couple of decades, if we're staring 81 days towards the future decade, and you go, one man, one diagnosis, $25 million into the field in 90 days, that's Michael Milken. 2.5 decades later, you have a 50% death reduction. Money's research, $800 million in. Research is cured. We just ought to be just cooking. But this is the Prostate Cancer Foundation, where we keep looking harder at the data. And what's concerned us, again, like a Massachusetts general health officer, is flatlining in the last 2 years. So if you blow up the trends from the American Cancer Society and look very carefully at 2014, 2015, 2016, you see a concerning picture. Could we, in fact, all of a sudden be flatlining our relentless effort to reduce death and suffering? Well, there are all kinds of curves. Lisa says, Dad, as intelligence goes up, happiness often goes down, and that's an inverse relationship in the Simpsons world. And of course, we say to Mike, we cannot fit every PCF investigator in the scientific retreat group shot anymore. But with us, the prostate cancer death rate falls as the intelligence on the disease, the human capital, rises. So we're a different inverse function, but we have to be looking very carefully at how we continue to attack what may be actually a flatlining of the curve that really does put us out of business. A great model for this has been lymphoma, and it's really gone from incurable to curable at stage 4. The paradigm was actually in a textbook in 1987, if you have one. And in fact, you didn't need the Genome Project for lymphomas to be cured, and we have to think hard about what that means in terms of developing therapeutics and strategies, even without having nucleotide sequences. There wasn't a single oncogene characterized when the strategy for curing the incurable in lymphoma was developed. But what is really interesting is that tumor burden areas of intervention were really mapped out. Well, in thinking hard now about trying to reduce deaths at every stage, we have to abandon, going forward into the next decade, some older paradigms. And basically, nucleic acids, proteins, carbohydrates, 6,090 papers in PubMed later, have been inadequate to identify basically men with lethal disease better than a PSA test and a digital rectal exam. So our interest in earlier detection with dogs is not so much a stunt, is so much fundamentally that actually volatile organic compounds, or the volatome in the urine, may be just as interesting as a biodetector of aggressive disease as any other technique, since we've never really worked on this form of molecules. We've never really worked on volatile organic compounds in the last 2 years. And of course, I've laid out one chemical structure of one that is involved, actually, or associated with prostate cancer. So we're very excited for other ideas beyond canine biodetection, but ultimately the idea of building sensors for finding prostate cancer here, where right at the point that the fish plot, which is the plot of all the genetic alterations that start to spread out as the cancer is coming to get you, as Don Coffey would say, right before genetic instability begins, relentlessly looking for cancer strategic detection there is going to be a huge area of interest of ours if urologists, physician scientists, and a whole new, basically, chemistry can come together. In addition to that, 30 years later, the lymphoma paradigm has been very powerful. We've had 11 FDA-approved drugs. We've lowered the death rate. And our clinical trials engine across the world has never been robust, and there wasn't a single phase 3 trial that anyone would have put Michael Milken on as compelling scientifically when he was diagnosed in 1993. So we've made huge progress with the lymphoma paradigm. The problem is we've busted through the paradigm. With basically 284 PCF Young Investigators and 100 Challenge Awards, we have a whole new kind of precision oncology for prostate cancer, where molecular profiling, liquid biopsies, genomic profiling, and radiomic profiling in the last year all have come to be able, like a sorting hat in Harry Potter, be able to find the yellow patients that should get radiopharmaceuticals, and find the orange patients by ascertainment that should get checkpoint inhibitors, and find the germline patients that should get pyrrolation inhibitors, and the green patients that could benefit from third-generation CAR T cells. This whole engine has turned our prostate cancer oncology, medical oncology, basically our whole therapeutic approach, from one of the 20th century to one of the 21st century, for where there is no paradigm. So we are the paradigm now. And I'd just like to reemphasize one more time, where the care of a prostate cancer patient is as much genomic and radiomic as it is anatomic in 2019. And we're very grateful for all the support to get us there. To get us further, we now have 41 basically control point treatment targets on the PCF Precision Oncology Research and Development prescription pad. There's the hyperlink. The slides will be up. And we would invite you very much in the research audience to study it very carefully. I won't do all the math, but I want to point out, if you tumble down to the targets, there's 73 other forms of human cancer that share these targets. So $1 for us, a challenge award for us, has enormous consequences for advancing all of human cancer research. The second rather challenging aspect is you'll notice the numerators are not 41. You've got 23 out of 41. Well, thank you. You've got 21 out of 41. You've got, next slide. Here we go. There's the math proof on the 73 tumors. But another way of looking at the math is 13 out of 41 of these tumors, 13 out of 41 of these control targets are actually first-in-field drugs for breast cancer. So we're actually celebrating Breast Cancer Awareness Month with full emphasis, actually trying to prosecute our precision prescription pad. Lastly, a great challenge is if we're the Prevent Curve Flattening Foundation and only 23 out of 41 or 60% of our work is even in the clinic, we may say no stage beyond cure, and the lymphoma mindset is the right mindset. Every patient, no matter how advanced the disease is, deserves a clinical trial with precision. We have a lot of work to do, and the answer is really the Fred the Baker philosophy. It's not time to make the donuts, it's really time to make first-in-field drugs. And we need basically half of our effort at the foundation going forward, if we're really going to reduce deaths, is to deliver Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, just like the commercial shows, which has had 1.2 million views, and it's a 20-year-old commercial. It's just time to make drugs. Academic teams of less than 10 can do it. We've proven this over and over again, and we're open for business in 2020, basically funding early academic drug discovery and drug development. We think that's an essential part of taking the death rate to zero. So what are our plans in 2020? Well, one is continue partnering and scaling. So you've heard a lot about our VA program, but our Prevent Cure Flattening is to extend not just to basically our 10 centers of precision oncology excellence in the VA, but to all 18, a very lucky number for those of you who understand Hebrew. And we think a very life-giving number for basically taking every precision decision faster to more and more men with prostate cancer, truly scaling our drug development and discovery efforts. And in fact, in real time, with basically electronic medical record big data, we know exactly where every veteran with prostate cancer is in the United States, 34,000 white men, 14,000 black men who've served our country. They'll serve again, ending prostate cancer, if we really deliver this early stage work. So basically, we have a lucky 7 for 2020 investment. 1, discover and develop first-in-field therapy for advanced prostate cancer, filling the prescription pad, and then delivering to phase 1-2 translational trials. 2, identify new control points, it may not be just 41 in lethal disease, and go back to 1 and discover and develop new drugs. 3, detect genomically lethal prostate cancer 5 to 15 years earlier than PSA or digital rectal exam by developing new strategic detection biotechnologies we couldn't conceive of, like basically the volatome until 2 years ago. 4, understand how nutrition, metabolic changes, and the microbiomic alterations, all these scientists could prevent, reverse, slow prostate cancer carcinogenesis and progression. 5, ascertain every single patient who could respond in a clinical trial or reduction to practice community trial for genomic control point therapy in the area of precision oncology clinical trials. 6, reduce prostate cancer disparities, the genetics plus the environment, gene-environment interactions in African-American men to finish the job of civil rights for cancer research for men of West African or African descent. And 7, democratize all the science, all the findings, so that if you served our country as a veteran, we'll serve you first with breakthroughs. In exchange, we'll get so much big data so fast, learning from every veteran, scaling to every patient, will be actually impacting every cancer in the VA and the American health system, and we think the world's developed health system. So those are our lucky 7 investments. What can you do for PCF? First, make your office building blue in 2020. Go blue outside your window. We were blue in all 50 states, from Wapakoneta, Ohio, population 9,000, to the Helmsley building in New York. We had a 3-log difference in the number of eyeballs that could have seen the blue building, but we were in all 50 states for the first time, and we would strongly ask you to make basically wear your work blue. We need to keep making prostate cancer and ending it something to talk about in September. It is for men what breast cancer in incidence and mortality is for women. Second, participate in November 2019. Third, vote in 2020. Fourth, join our new African American Prostate Cancer Disparity Research and Intervention Working Group. The email address is enddisparity@pcf.org. Lorelei Mucci, PCF Young Investigator, grown up, very senior PCF investigator, class of 2008, is helping lead the working group. Recruit for new prostate cancer young investigators in different disciplines, particularly mathematicians, big data people, and recruit for VA young investigators. Collaborate, keep collaborating, just like we were seeing last night at the poster session. Inspect the prescription pad up on the website and email me with additions, changes, and CC Howard. I'm trying to keep his email inbox reduced a bit. Share unpublished data like you're doing. Apply in 2020 for NIH and DOD and VA funds and tell us which ones you get and don't. Advocate this year for a PCF NCI Directors Program Review Group for 2020. The last program review group the National Cancer Institute has had, God rest Andrew's soul, was 21 years ago. There hasn't been a national strategic plan for prostate cancer in basically 2 decades. We're primed to bring the findings of this scientific retreat right up to the NCI Director's Office and say, P is for partnership in PCF. Let's partner on some of these enormous initiatives when we're now 800 million in, and we're a proven commodity in terms of driving the death rate down. Lastly, engage actually with our veterans programs. And finally, partner with us, please. When we want to feature your research on PCF Digital or with donors, please respond. So with that, it's been a privilege and a pleasure to be the CEO and president of this foundation. Thank you each and every one of you for your life-saving work. God bless you, and God keep you, and Godspeed.